Miss Nicole,
Yes.
if I get the test wrong, can I take it again and do it the way it's also?
Okay, so we are reading Day of Disaster, narrative nonfiction. A 14-year-old boy,
calm down.
a dangerous coal mine and a horrific accident that would change America forever. So we have. Thank you, dear.
Sorry.
All right, so you guys like to view it like this? I kind of like it in a magazine. Is it easier like this, though? All right, first let's watch the little.
Hello, Scope readers. My name is Kristen Lewis, and I'm excited to take you behind the scenes of my latest article, Day of Disaster. It's the story of a 14-year-old boy named Albert Buckle. Albert survived one of the most devastating coal mining accidents in American history. On November 13, 1909, fire broke out at the Cherry Mine in Cherry, Illinois, where Albert worked. In the end, 259 people lost their lives. When I started this story, I knew I wanted to help you feel like Albert would have felt, to be a teen coal miner in the early 20th century. Whether or not Albert realized it, 1909 was an exciting time to be alive in America. Food was affordable and plentiful. There were fancy new fashions and new kinds of entertainment, like silent movies and ragtime music. America's population growing fast. In the early 20th century, hundreds of thousands of immigrants were streaming into America every year, bringing with them new customs, foods, and traditions that helped America's culture become more vibrant and diverse. Across the United States, there was a feeling of optimism, of confidence. For many, it felt like life was just getting better and better. But all that progress came at a price, a human price. Back then, many kids like Albert didn't get to go to school. They had to work instead. Children toiled in cotton mills, sticking their tiny fingers into dangerous machines that spun thread. They stood on street corners selling newspapers or shining shoes. They sat hunched over sewing machines in dreary factories. And they worked for hours in the darkness of coal mines like Cherry. Anytime I write a historical article, I begin by creating a list of ideas or topics I might want to cover. As you can see, I had a lot more ideas than I would be able to fit in my story. But I wasn't worried. I had help, my research partner, Adi Braun. Adi and I read all these books and articles. We looked at historical records, diaries, and we spoke to a historian. Also worked with a local librarian who generously sent us a wealth of primary sources, survivor accounts, charts, Albert's own testimony about the events of that day. It was a lot to keep track of. That's why I kept a timeline and a list of notes and terms. I also studied a diagram of the mine itself. This is about where Albert was when the fire broke out. This is the air shaft through which he eventually escaped. One of the most interesting parts of my research was learning about coal mining. In 1909, there were around 700,000 people working in mines. In fact, many Americans today have ancestors who were coal miners during this period, including me. That's my great-grandfather. Coal mining was not an easy job. Miners often worked for 10 hours a day or more, 6 days a week. They used heavy tools and temperamental dynamite to carve out the coal from the ground. Accidents were common. But like many miners, Albert probably felt a sense of pride. The work paid better than many farming and factory jobs. Coal miners formed close bonds with each other. If a miner got injured on the job, his fellow miners would usually take up a collection for him and his family. After my research was done, I was ready to get to work. For me, the hardest part of writing the story was weaving together so many elements. The history of coal mining, the fire in the cherry mine, the plight of child workers, and the changes that came in the years after the disaster. I needed a way to wrangle all that information into a clear and compelling article. To do this, I used two types of writing: narrative and informational. As you read, see if you can spot the difference. Why might I have chosen different types of writing? What purpose do they serve in the story? Even though I'm finished with the article, I still find myself thinking a lot about Albert Buckle and the other child workers of the early 20th century. I hope you will think about them too as you read Day of Disaster.
All right, so now we have a little bit of background as to what was going on during the story. Okay, so let's go to, and I don't know, sometimes it has that, sometimes it, oh, vocabulary, there we go. But where is this slide? Usually it's on the side. Do you guys on your view see, let me go to my view. Now, did you guys know about that type of stuff during that time? So don't talk at once.
I got it.
Did you guys ever hear about any of that stuff or not?
I've heard about it at one point, like there was like a certain highlight in, you know, the country of America, but they all have their highlights and downfalls.
Okay.
My history class, I learned about it. No, it's fine.
I'm just trying to get to my, it's very slow. Can you, I don't know, can you see mine loading slowly? Right, there we go. There's some, trying to get it to the view eye. Come on. I wonder if it's, all right, so it's not showing that. All right, so we're gonna take turns reading. All right, so I'm gonna go to my favorite version. I know you guys hate it, but I
can read, write, and brisk.
all right, over to that. There we go. All right, so sunshine. Can you see it, or do I need to go bigger?
I can see it.
Okay. Sunshine. Miners attached small oil lamps like the one above to their hats. These lamps provided light in dark underground tunnels. Miners called the light their sunshine. The lamps were dangerous. Their open flames could trigger explosions. Okay, so see on his head? Yeah, that doesn't look too fun to have on wrapped on your head. Okay, so then we watched the show shopping video, Day of Disaster, and I want you to think, what was life like for children who worked in the coal mines, okay? And so let's split this up. All right, so the first section, Zymeria, you said you're gonna read? Which section did you say?
No, Brisk and Bright. That's the
Okay,
second.
Bright and Brisk, okay. And then Transforming America, do you want that one?
Me?
Ian,
Oh.
Hmm?
you want that one, Transforming America?
Sure.
All right, Difficult and Dangerous is gonna be Syriana.
Transform.
And then Lonely and Boring is back to Zymeria. Scorching Heat, that's going to be Ian. Scrambling to Get Out is going to be Syriana. And then Trap Below is going to be back to Zymeria. And then Ian, you're going to finish it with The Legacy. I'll do all the pictures and stuff. Okay, so let me go back. And I'll do the first part for you guys. Just bear with me because it's tiny.
You having a heart attack or something?
Let me go full screen.
This is personal work
All right.
Did you pick the conference?
All right. I keep having to move you guys. Sorry. Because then I can't see. All right, there we go. All right. 14-year-old Albert Buckle was staring at death itself. Thick smoke billowed toward him. Flames licked at the ceiling. With each passing second, the heat grew more unbearable. But Albert couldn't run away from the roaring fire. He was trapped deep underground in the coal mine where he worked. As the inferno blazed hotter and stronger, people were starting to panic. "Everyone is gonna die," someone shouted. It was November 13th, 1909, at the Cherry Mine, a coal mine about 100 miles southwest of Chicago, Illinois. Hundreds of feet underground, the Cherry Mine is where Albert and nearly 500 other miners spent their days digging out coal from deep inside the earth. But today, disaster had struck. Albert and other miners were caught in the middle of one of the most devastating coal mine fires in American history. So before we start reading, let me just focus. Let's look on the top. Children of the coal mines. These are some of the jobs that kids had. All right, mule driver. Mule drivers led the mules that pulled cars full of coal through the mines. Mule driving was often the job that kids wanted most. Trapper. A trapper opened and shut doors to let mules and coal cars through. These doors were part of mine's ventilation system. The doors kept fresh air in and bad air out. Okay? And look at the little sign, shut this door. That means you. All right, go ahead.
6 hours earlier, the day had dawned bright and brisk in the small town of Cherry. Albert, his 16 younger brother Richard, and 478 other coal miners pulled on their overalls and boots, grabbed their lunch pails, and said goodbye to their families. Then they headed off for what they thought would be an ordinary day at the Cherry Mine. Around 6:30 a.m., a whistle blared, signaling that it was time to start work. To enter the mine, Albert crowded into a small metal cage with a group of other miners. The cage was then lowered down a shaft, kind like an elevator. There were 2 air shafts at the Cherry Mine, and there were lifelines. The only way to get in and out of the mine. After a 30-second drop into pitch blackness, the cage cranked to a stop. The 117 feet below the surface, and the miners stepped out into the damp, cold air. They had arrived in the Cherry Mine like a vast underground city. The mine had 3 main levels from which a maze of tunnels and passageways extended for miles and miles. Hazards at the Cherry Mine, as coal mine at the time, were everywhere. Cave-ins were constant threats, so were the underground gases that would kill a person in minutes. Perhaps most terrifying of all was the risk of explosions and fires. Okay. But Albert didn't spend much time thinking about many ways a coal miner could be killed. Instead, he probably focused on the pay, which was higher than what would have earned working on a farm or in a factory. Besides, the cherry mine was a new and modern. Many said it was the safest mine in America, that it was basically fireproof. As Albert would soon find out, they could not have been more wrong.
Transforming America.
Coal is a rock-like substance found in underground. It is known as fossil fuel. Like oil and gas, when you burn coal, heat and energy are released. By the time Albert was born, coal was changing the lives of millions of Americans. Indeed, Albert was growing up in a period of great technology advancement known as known as the industrial revolution, and the coal was the power behind it. Coal was powering the trains, speeding across America, making it possible to travel faster and farther than ever before. Coal was fueling the giant new ships churning across the ocean, and coal was being used in factories to make the iron and steel that were becoming America's bridges and skyscrapers. During this period, thousands of coal mines were blasted into the ground, especially the Illinois, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia were vast deposits of coal that had been discovered. Some of these mines were 1,200 feet underground, as deep as the Empire State Building is tall. People came from all over the United States to work in these mines. They also came from the way across the Atlantic Ocean, from Italy, Ireland, and Eastern Europe. Down in the cherry mine, Albert would have heard at least 10 languages spoken. But America's love for coal had a dark side. Using coal created enormous pollution, poisoning rivers, and filling the air with toxins. Today we know it also contributes to climate change. By the end of the 19th century, a stomach-churning brew of newt and grime hung over many American cities. As one journalist observed in Chicago, pedestrians had to pass through the atmosphere that was simply choking.
Okay.
Mining coal was a tough and dirty job, as Albert well knew. Day after day, miners blasted through rock with dynamite. They cut out the coal with heavy tools, their backs aching. They shoveled the coal into cars that looked like giant metal pits. Then they used wheels to pull the coal cars along metal tracks like the tracks on a roller coaster to an air shaft. From there, the coal was hoisted up the shaft to the surface, and it wasn't just women who toiled in the mines. In the early 1900s, thousands of children like Albert did too, some as young as 8 years old. Since 1885, the U.S. government had required children to be at least 12 to work in the mine. And ironic, the law set the minimum age at 16, but these laws were often ignored. It might be hard to imagine why parents would let their kids work in dangerous mines when they should have been in school. But many families were so poor that they faced a terrible choice: send their children to work or watch them starve. In fact, Albert and Richard likely felt proud to work at the mine. His father had passed away a few years earlier, and it was up to them to support their mother and little sister.
Okay. Now, it says on the corner, Breaker Boy. Outside the mine was a large, noisy building called a breaker. This is where coal was broken up and sorted by big machines. Some mines also employed breaker boys. Their job was to pick out small pieces of rock from the precious coal. They sat hunched over for hours, their fingers often frozen and bloody. All right, so this is going to end in 4 minutes. Do you think we can get through lonely and boring and scorching heat? We'll see where we're at with lonely and boring.
Around 11 a.m., Albert finished eating lunch with his brother and headed back to work. As a trapper, Albert's job was to sit by a door and open it only to let miners and mules pass through. The door was part of the mine's ventilation system, which kept fresh air in places where people were working and prevented the buildup of dangerous gas. The trapper's job was important. It was also warm. Imagine sitting alone all day every day, just looking at girls and people. Sometimes you might not see another person out, but you couldn't fall asleep. If a mule team came speeding along and you could crash, mules and driver. What was Albert thinking about that November morning as he sat guarding the door? Was he looking forward to the next day? It would be Sunday, his only day off. He was thinking about his birthday, which was 2 weeks. To be clear, that's where they moved in and introduced him. That's it. I'm done.
Okay, try the next one. We got 2 minutes. Scorching heat. Hit it.
Who, me?
Nope. Ian.
Oh.
Not too long after our lunch, Albert opened the door for a car filled with hay, food for the food for the mules. A few moments later, another miner came and ran up to Albert. "Fire!" he shouted. It turns out that the mine electric lights were broken, so that day miners were using oil lamps. Somehow oil from one of these lamps had dripped onto the hay car, setting the hay on fire. Albert was ordered to fetch some water. He ran into the mule stables and filled up his pail. Still, he probably didn't fear for his safety. Small fires could usually be put out without much trouble. But by the time Albert returned, it was clear this fire was different. The smoke was already so thick he could barely see. Without Albert tossed his pail of water onto the blaze, it did nothing. Worse, the car was stuck under the air shaft. Fresh air was fanning the flames. Soon they were licking at the ceiling. It became clear that Albert needed to get out. He and a few others headed out for the shaft to take a cage to the surface. Maddeningly, the cage operator stopped him. He said the fire would soon extinguish. They could get back to work. And so for the next 30 minutes, Albert watched coal, not people. People lifted up from the shaft, all while the score.
Ian, freeze where you are for 1 second. I'm going to end and restart, okay? Actually, Zymeria, will you zoom us all in? Because I have to wait for this to load. Will you zoom all of us in, and then I'm going to have you record since this has to load on the computer. Okay? All right, see you in a second. Everyone just come right back on.